Hello there. Good morning. Well, it's morning here right now. Welcome to this episode of Freedom Lovers Life. I'm your host, Patrick Hiebert, the CEO of Autris, and Autris is the parent company of EcoVillages. So you might start seeing Autris and stuff on the different intros and things to our videos and on our website, and that is why. Today I have an extremely special guest, my son, Spencer Hiebert, Spencer?
Hello, everybody. I'm officially the Chief Design Officer for Veritas or EcoVillages and Veritas Village, but I do a variety of things. Whatever needs to be done, that's what I do.
So Spencer is one of the co-founders of Autris and EcoVillages, and which is the creator of Veritas Villages. And so the two of us together do a lot of the decisions on what's going to happen with the villages. And as we expand into more countries and more places within the countries we're in, it's an exciting time. So we're going to talk about, as most of you know, we're basing all our communities, our Veritas Village communities, on the FIRST certification or FIRST philosophy. FIRST stands for freedom, independence, resiliency, sustainability, and transparency. And today we're focusing on sustainability. So what Spencer and I spend a lot of our time on, and it's actually the fun part of our job, is to figure out a lot of how to make the communities as close to 100% sustainable as possible. And so we're going to focus on the sustainability, which self-sustainability, community sustainability. Beauty about being in a community is you don't have to be 100% reliant on yourself. You can be reliant on the like-minded people around you. So we're going to talk about different things. And Spence, let's talk about a little bit about the origins of where this all came from. Obviously, you and I spent a lot of time on the water talking and trying to make life as sustainable as possible and not reliant on others.
Yeah, well, definitely. We'll keep this segment short because we've gone over this before, and if you're familiar with us, you've probably heard this story before. But we started, really it was sailboats specifically. I mean, the strongest in my memory, the boat was a 36-foot Catalina, and we would spend months in the summer sailing through a region called Desolation Sound. And we'd kind of make it a game to see how long we could live off the sea, so to speak. So we would still bring canned foods and stuff. Like, we weren't 100% self-sufficient, but it was a fun thing to do in the summers when I was a young teenager growing up, to see how long we could survive fishing and crabbing and eating oysters and things like that. And we did pretty well. A couple of the summers we took it a little more seriously and wanted to see how far we could go with it. And yeah, we only tapped into the canned food a couple times. So in general, we did pretty good. Sailing as a whole and boating in general, but specifically sailboats, they get that little extra notch above the rest for self-sustainability because they're powered by the wind a lot of the time. So it's a unit that everything within it kind of operates within itself, and that's what I really like about sailboats is they're powered by nature. I was actually living on a sailboat for a number of years, a 30-foot Catalina, that one, and during that time I was working in the marine industry, working on yachts. I really enjoyed that work, and I got to learn a lot about the systems in the boats during that time. That make boats self-sufficient, and so really that is solar, water desalination, and sailboats under the power of the wind essentially can continuously travel indefinitely and have indefinite water and power. So I really enjoyed that part about boats. I really respected the boating life for that reason, and I guess it was over COVID when we started having conversations about what, we previously, decades earlier, we wanted to bring that lifestyle to a decade roughly earlier, we wanted to bring that lifestyle to the land. So we did that in Nicaragua at a community called Milagro Verde. Back then, the technology wasn't as far, but we got, functional, full-size homes working on solar. And now it's much more practical and easy with the technology. The off-grid technology has come so far, from solar to biodigesters to, water systems, water pumps, brushless direct current pumps and things like that. There's a long list of things that make it really practical to do now, and the homes can run really efficiently. But back then, I guess the Milagro Verde would have been the first community that we did that with. And then it was kind of over COVID where it reignited our desire to want to take it to the next level and make entire larger scale communities, because we were both working in development at the time. But we wanted to go back to the roots of the self-sufficient sailing style of a home, not sailing style, but boat style, where the home is a single unit that can continue to operate by itself, regardless of what's happening around it. And then take that to the community level as well. The community is a unit that can continue to run regardless of what's happening around the country, kind of thing. So COVID, again, reignited that desire because of obvious reasons, really. It was certain governments, overreach.
There's nothing like a kick in the pants from authoritarian governments to make you want to make a self-sustainable community.
It's a really good reminder of, what can happen in a pretty short period of time, from supply chain issues to governments taking it too far. I'm personally Canadian, and I feel pretty strongly that the Canadian government overstepped their legal boundaries of what they were allowed to do, and didn't really.
Not to mention moral.
And definitely moral boundaries, and they didn't really see any repercussions from that action. People kind of just accepted it, which I personally find quite unacceptable. But so we're acting on it. Really, we're not aggressive people. Our action is just doing it ourselves. Really, making a community and doing it right. A community where freedom is number one. The values of your family and everything. You can live your life in a live and let live manner, and nobody's going to really tell you what to do in our communities, and that's really our goal. And I think naturally, Panama is a great country for that, because there's the financial freedom aspect of Panama that comes into play, and it really takes it to that next level, because if you're running a business, for example, an offshore business in Panama, there's no tax on that money that you're bringing into Panama. Panama benefits off of it because that money enters their system. You benefit because your business that's offshore is not being taxed on that income that's offshore. So the country has a good system in place to implement a community like this. Not to mention, as you can probably see, it is the rain season right now. But even the rain season, you get some significant sun, which really on a practical side makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I forgot, I guess, speaking of nature and stuff, I forgot to mention, we're here at Veritas Village, Coronado, one of the Veritas Villages in Panama. And another beautiful morning. I don't know exactly what the temperature is, probably 24, 25 degrees. So it's very comfortable, and it's all kind of always like this, same kind of temperature range and beautiful spot. And yeah, we get rain during the rainy season, but you also get beautiful sunlight. You growing up in the Vancouver area and near Seattle kind of area, when you think of rainy season, you think of 3 weeks of gray skies without seeing sun, then you get an hour of sun, and then you get another month of not seeing the sun. And
yeah,
that's not the same as tropical sun or tropical rainfall. Usually we get a 20-30 minute downpour where it might be the same amount of rain as 3 weeks in Vancouver, but it all happens in a few minutes, and then generally the sun comes out, or the day is refreshed and it's nice again, and you get the beautiful. We're kind of in the foresty part of Veritas Village, but it's really interesting. Multiple areas to this community, with a creek that runs through it year round, and it has a jungle-y area, more of a open area, and then these treed areas like this. So you can see it's very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're talking about sustainability today. There's kind of three main components in terms of survival when it comes to sustainability, and there's lots of other sundry pieces around it when it comes to being sustainable. But the main ones are food, water, and energy. So let's start with the talk about food and our food forest, community orchards, and stuff like that. So if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to start, we have a lot more common space than the average development community. Part of that is because of the community orchards, the food forest, if you will. That's a large portion of the community, and we can overlay a map at this point and kind of highlight that food forest area. But we have currently over 200 trees that we've planted in the orchard area, and about 40 varieties of fruit as well. So we're just kind of getting a head start at this point. Eventually there'll be plenty more as far as quantity of trees and variety. And additionally, we have a lot of space set aside for the vegetable gardens as well as hydroponics. So those we haven't started. We are going to be starting the foundation for the hydroponics area quite soon. We haven't started the gardens because those will be just the nature of vegetables. They grow pretty fast.
The annual stuff can refresh all the
Yeah,
time.
so that will be more when the community's developed out, and then we're ready to start doing the annual more vegetables and things of that nature.
Don't forget the coffee plants, my favorite.
Yeah, we have coffee, Robusta, I believe is the
Robusta species, whatever you call a plant.
Yeah, I'm not a coffee expert, but I do like coffee, and so it's going to be pretty cool to be growing some on site. This specific type of coffee can grow at this elevation. Coffee's very particular, but this strain can grow here.
When I went and looked at them the other day, they're already like 2-3 feet high and look very healthy. So I'm excited. I'll probably get coffee beans next year. So that's pretty cool. And when homes start getting done here, the people can go and have coffee. One of the questions I get asked a lot on the community orchards and gardens too is like, do we have to take care of them? Because I'm not really a green thumb kind of person. And the answer is no. It's part of the community. It's free for the community to eat. But typically what works best is we find that the HOA hires a couple guys, and employment and labor costs here are very low, so it's easy to do at a low cost. And we've had farmers markets in our other communities, and we'll have that here as well. But what I found worked really well was the guys working in the orchards and gardens put together little packages like on a Tuesday and a Saturday or something. It's got some potatoes, some carrots, some bananas, a papaya, whatever is in season right then, and you just come and you just kind of pick up your box of stuff. And that's easy. But for people we also have had in the past like what we call champions of the community orchards and gardens, where somebody that really loves to garden is involved with the folks that are hired to do it. But if you rely on the champions, it doesn't always work because they'll go on vacation or they get sick of it for a while. And so it's best if the HOA takes care of it. But we were talking about this earlier. One of the things about freedom on the first philosophy that we have is financial freedom. And having your own water source, your own food, your own energy, all produced on site, really gives you that financial freedom. There's HOA fees and there's property tax, and that theoretically is pretty much all you have to spend money on. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we might be able to offset that as well. But I guess we should talk about the on-site water too.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't mention a few other things. We've got the tilapia pond. We got nearby livestock. We'll have cattle and pigs and things nearby. Don't really want them in the community because they smell, to be honest.
We'll have a chicken coop in the community.
Yeah, for eggs.
We have that set up far enough aside from the home sites as well. But yeah, for the larger, smellier livestock, we have, fortunately, this location we're at is surrounded by ranches and different farms. So there's plenty of opportunity nearby as well for the larger livestock. And then hydroponics, again, that will be on site, and the hydroponics are extremely effective for growing vertical farms, essentially, growing lots of vegetables on site.
I saw a YouTube video on 30-foot, 40-foot tall vertical hydroponics the other day. It was like pretty cool, like 3 stories high, and they were getting something like 250 acres worth of food within like half an acre. So it was crazy.
Yeah, it's really impressive what you can do with it.
So you don't need that much space for hydroponics. And the hydroponic tests, well, you're really into it, but the ones that even I've done in our office and at home in my apartment is pretty crazy how fast that stuff produces. So, we had like peppers and tomatoes and things like that within a few weeks.
Yeah,
it was faster. I did an experiment.
Growing.
I put some in soil in a garden on our deck, and then one right beside it in hydroponics, and the hydroponics beat it 5 to 1.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
It grows much faster, and it's crazy how dramatic the difference is between here and Canada as well. I do hydroponics, kind of hobby-size hydroponics, both here and in Canada, and just the sun that comes, well, even in the office, the sun coming through the window versus my hydroponic system in my kitchen at home in Canada is night and day difference. The speed of growth is dramatically different. Here is much faster. So the hydroponics mixed in with natural light coming in through windows, or in the case of a hydroponic greenhouse, it'll produce a lot of food and at a fast rate. But then we also have the pond, so we'll have the tilapia pond there as well. Right now, it's the hole is there, so we have preparation for it. But that was actually one of my first jobs, was building ponds. So that was a hard, laborious job. You're essentially digging holes and moving rocks, but it was a good learning experience, and I I do know how to build a pond, so we'll make sure that pond functions well. But for the hydroponics and things like that too, we're going to bring in professionals to fine tune the systems. I'm a hobbyist when it comes to hydroponics, but I don't know it like the back of my hand. So for those more fine-tuned detail things, we'll bring in the professionals. As far as the solar systems and stuff, though, we have an extreme amount of hands-on experience. So you can only do so much on paper before you just need to test systems. And for example, here at the Welcome Center, this is 100% off-grid.
The whole community is off-grid. There's not a single power cable from a utility coming into here, or water line.
Right now, we don't even have water coming in. We will eventually have, as a backup, the municipal water that runs by our property. We'll have a T-valve essentially running in. So if we need it in an emergency, we have 2 wells on site. It would be pretty unlikely to need it because both wells would have to fail at the same time, which is unlikely to happen ever. But even in that case, we have a third source of water. So we always want to be self-reliant with our own wells on site for a couple of reasons. The self-reliant aspect of it, we don't want to be reliant on the outside of the government's source of water, but also just out of respect for the local community. We're going to be building a fair-sized community here, and the water pressure from that main line would be affected downstream. And so that's a big part of what we do too. We want to show general respect for the community that we're developing in.
And we help out a lot in the local communities and around all our communities, whether it's in Panama or Nicaragua or Belize or wherever. But just a couple of weeks ago, we put in a new water well. Well, there was a community here with 40 or 50 homes, small town, village, that had no water. They had literally, like you see in videos from Africa, they're carrying water on their shoulder or the top of their head to the village for their water. When we found this out, and we drilled a well, and we put in a solar-powered pump, and they're amazing these days. The amount of water that you get out of those things is unbelievable. Yeah. And so then 800 feet higher than that on a hill, we put a water tank and plumbed it all up, and now they have water pressure for the 40 or 50 homes, and it's the first time in their lives they've had running water. So they're pretty excited, and it's great quality water that's in the aquifers here from mountain spring-fed water, and so it's very cool. It's it's one of the things we like to do in all the communities. We have a foundation called Help Them Help Themselves, and one of the things it does is help the people around us, and we're really involved in the communities around us. We don't shut the gates to the community. Like, we have our farmers markets where the locals can come in and sell their produce and everything like that. So we're very involved. People ask that all the time too, like how do you get along with the locals? Great. We provide almost all the jobs for them generally in our area, and they're very respectful of that, and then we include them a lot too. So the gate's really only there if the crap hits the fan, like during COVID. Nobody's coming in here to tell us to wear masks or get vaccinated or whatever it is, and that's our philosophy on the independence. But back to water and energy and that sort of thing, we are 100% self-sufficient in here between our own on-site water. Like Spence said, the municipal water could be a backup, but we're going to do everything we can to never use that. We do, have some filtering on it, and we'll have charcoal and UV filtering and really non-intrusive filtering on the water. If you want to add chlorine to your water and different chemicals, that's fine. That's up to you. We're not going to do that. You can do that as it enters your home, but a lot of people in these kinds of communities would prefer not to have that stuff put in the water. So we're able to, through the laws in Panama, basically not have to do that. You can do it as long as everybody has the opportunity to do that in their own home, which you do. You have a freedom-oriented community. You can do whatever you want. So, we also on the size of the storage, the water department of the government comes in and looks at how big the community is, how many potential people could be in here living at one particular time, and how much water that would use. And their recommendation was 15 to 18,000 gallon tank. For storage, we put in a 30,000 gallon tank. It's the largest tank I've seen in this area. And the reason for that is just to be sure we have enough water. And so that it's a big tank up in the sky. We're going to put a little viewing deck around it too, because it's the highest thing on the property, and it'll be kind of beautiful sights, 360-degree sights from up there from the Picacho Mountain, which is the tallest mountain that is on that side of us, and the ocean, which is behind us right now as we speak. So let's move on to talk about energy a little bit, on solar. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
Your thoughts on it?
Well, Just to add one thing on the water tower, we'll show you the water tower as it sits now, but we are going to beautify it as well. So we're going to be putting, lattice around it and lots, vines growing through it. We might even be building some structures within it, and then cantilevered walkway around the top and everything. So we will show the water tower, but it was just installed. So take that with a grain of salt, because we will be beautifying it as well. But it is a very significant and useful tower. It's 30,000 gallons. But yeah, on the power side of things, really, there's multiple ways we could produce power on site here. We have the creek running by through the community. We have, there's always the potential for wind and everything. But honestly, the most practical these days, especially with this location, like I said, this is the rain season right now, and we're pulling in kilowatts of power at the moment, and that's just solar. It's that good now. There's really no reason to, especially in a region like this, to not use it, and it's a standard feature in all of our homes. So all of the homes at Veritas Village communities will have solar as a standard, and that's including the batteries and everything, the whole system to run the home, and that's really because we just believe in the homes being self-sufficient units themselves, much like a boat. Again, it goes back to that. We could have done a community grid system with like a solar farm, and technically on paper that is a more efficient system because you don't have as much excess per home of power generation. However, we like to go with the route of self-sufficiency, because if somebody else were to cause a problem on that grid with extreme usage of power or something along those lines, if there was an issue with that grid, even within a community grid that's on its own solar farm, an issue is then extrapolated to all of the homes. With our methods here of having every home have its own system, one home, if there is a problem, and the systems are very reliable these days. We've been running this system here, and this is a test system. The systems that we actually put in our homes, that we've been stress testing this system essentially. The systems we actually put in our homes will be professionally wired and everything tuned perfectly. This one is me and you messing with it with different.
Oh, we change it every week to find out what works best.
Testing different batteries and everything. But back to my point on that is really just each home is its own reliable unit, and then if there's an issue, only that home has the issue. You have like
self-sufficiency within a community, so you get best of both worlds. You got people around you who have your back if something's going wrong, if you have a medical issue or whatever it is. You're not living in a yurt out in the forest. That's another point I'd like to make. These are luxury homes. Just because we're calling it an off-grid community does not mean it's not luxury. I want my flat screen TVs and fridges and freezers and air conditioning and everything too. So sorry, I cut you off one.
Yeah, well, just we're into that point too. Insulated concrete walls, right? We're talking like very solid, strong homes here.
And the sustainability of the homes too. They're concrete and steel. They'll be here hundreds of years. Like I was just in Europe speaking at a conference and just looking at the homes that were made out of concrete in like 400 AD. I mean that's 1,600 years ago, and they're still going.
Yeah, it's a big part of it too is there's using certain materials that are more sustainable. Ultimately, you're recycling those materials, or you going through and rebuilding the home multiple times. When you have a really well-built concrete home, it'll last hundreds of years. So it's
we always get challenged about, well, you're building concrete homes, and with steel, is that really sustainable or green or whatever? And honestly, we're not the Green New Deal people. We're in fact we're one of the reasons we're using the name Autris instead of EcoVillages now is because EcoVillages is kind of a word that gets used too much by people that are green obsessed. I'll just be saying it that way. We do it because it's, good. Obviously it's good for the planet and everybody wants that, but it's the financial freedom and the financial independence and self-sustainability that you get from it. And honestly, if you have a concrete home that lasts a couple hundred years, well, we'll be long gone before our homes are. Here, if you build out of wood, which a lot of people say, oh, you should do out of wood, it's renewable. It's like it also gets rot and termites in the tropics, and you're replacing it every few years. Yeah, so how sustainable is that?
The environment just doesn't allow for like classic stick frame construction here. and nor would we really want to do it. The insulated concrete walls are not only really long lasting, and there could always be a debate of what's more better, better for the environment and all that stuff. But ultimately, we are always practicality above all. We want our homes to be essentially they're going to act. They could act as a fridge. They're an insulated concrete unit that is well sealed, and they're using high SEER air conditioners that are on inverter air conditioning systems that are very, very efficient. So everything's made with a purpose to be very practical and run and be very reliable. And as well as even with the solar systems, we will have automatic backup generators built into the systems too. So if there is kind of a freak week in the rain season where you get 6 days straight of really heavy cloud coverage, which is really uncommon here, but it can happen. It's possible, and we have those systems in place to deal with that. The generator will fire up.
And it's probably good to point out, because sometimes I get asked this too, this is not optional systems. I mean, it's not like we're forcing them on you, but there is no other grid here. We're not reliant on anything at all from the government departments or the Naturgy is the name of the local power company. These come with the home. So if you think of that alone, the value of these systems, they'll have, the bigger homes will have probably 60 kilowatt hours of battery storage. Go look at what a 60 kilowatt hour system with 24 panels or 20 panels or whatever and a big inverter costs. What did my son-in-law and daughter got quoted something like $50,000 or something for a system even without batteries.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was something like 30,000, but it didn't have a battery system at all. It was a solar array, because in British Columbia where they live, there's the net metering, so that you get credited. So people there typically won't put in batteries, but personally, I don't really agree with that setup, because to me, the solar isn't only for saving money, it's also for self-sufficiency, because BC Hydro is relatively good all around. However, there is power outages. It's Canada. There's snowstorms. There's all kinds of things that can cause outages. So having a grid-tied system without a battery bank, to me, is kind of not defeats the purpose, because there is still a lot of value you get out of that. However, with not that much more effort, well, it's expensive to these big batteries, but if you put them in, that you get so much more out of your system. You never have to be concerned if BC Hydro there or if Naturgy here power goes out. We don't even know.
We've seen that.
We've gone to Coronado before, the town that's 10-15 minutes depending on the weight of your foot on the pedal, but it's just down the hill, and we didn't even realize the power was out there, right? So we've gone for dinner and arrived and power's out in town, kind of thing. We didn't even know. We're up here using our power, enjoying life. It's all good.
It's always funny to me in these self-sustaining powered homes that, I mean, I was sitting right here on the deck in the Welcome Center and looking out at the ocean, and lightning hit a transformer out there, and of course everything around the community, the neighborhood, other than Veritas Village, went dark. And I didn't have any impact at all. And then all of a sudden, a little while later, our neighbor came over and asked if he could plug his cell phone into our outlets, because we were the only place in 10 miles that had power. So to me, you talk about the grid tie systems in Canada or whatever, that's self-sustainability while the sun is up, which is half, if you're lucky, of the time. And I'd like to be self-sustainable.
It's less than half a lot of the year.
Especially, at that time of year. So to me, self-sustainability at night is important too, basically 24 hours a day. So it's very cool. You know what, Andrea and I come here and we stay here, and we just did like 5 or 6 loads of laundry, and you were saying when the days you do laundry, your power bill goes up by 3 times or something like that.
Yeah, I pay attention to this kind of stuff, and me and...
Nobody else in the world knows that.
Yeah. Me and my girlfriend are pretty, we're pretty good with power consumption in general, because me having lived on a boat, and then kind of showing her those ways as well. We're pretty efficient with our power usage with an old, inefficient house. So we've got our power bills quite low, but you can see I track the graphs. That's something BC Hydro, I got to give it to them. Their graphs and everything are really nice. All their statistics and everything on what you've, the analysis on your power usage is really good. But the days that we do big, it's a cleaning day, we got a bunch of loads of laundry, it's 3 times the power usage on those days. Like the dryers are crazy power draw. They're just a dead short essentially. Just how much heat can we jam into this drum with electricity? And so that's another thing actually with our homes too, is with anything, any heat source essentially, any extreme heat source at least, we always go with propane or gas appliances. So stoves, hot water heaters, and even dryers, clothes dryers. We go with gas because they're just a lot more efficient. You can't get, like, the solar systems as good as they are. That's a big beating. If you have a 240 volt appliance that's just dead shorting, that's thousands of watts being pulled for a long time, say if you're cooking in the oven or something, right? So yeah, so we go with gas for those appliances, and it just makes the home super self-sufficient. You may be thinking, well, gas is not that, I mean, I can't produce propane on site. Technically you can, not propane, but natural gas of sorts. Methane, yeah. There are biodigesters, and this is an option that we'll offer too. And this is not a standard, but it is an option that we'll offer to do biodigesters, and you can literally produce your own gas on site with those. I'm not going to get into the details on this chat.
You can imagine the rest.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could be even with that, but we'll also have a storage of tanks. They get automatically switched for you when they get low and that sort of thing. That's pretty common actually down here. And obviously for the next event, the next COVID-like event, I have my theories on what that's going to be, but we'll have a warehouse basically with stored tanks for propane and that sort of thing too. So that makes us self-reliant in that aspect as well. But we've chatted for a while here now, but I think one of the things I'd mentioned earlier, I wanted to say on the financial freedoms, there's all sorts of freedoms. Freedoms of speech is super important, and you'll be surrounded here in Veritas Village by like-minded people that aren't woke and aren't into cancel culture and censorship. So you can say what you want to say, and it's refreshing to sit around people like that, have freedom of speech. But it's also financial freedom. And so really when you take all these things, and I was saying earlier, Andrea and I love coming here and thinking that we can do 15 loads of laundry, we can do whatever we want, everything on, air conditioners all going, and it costs a whopping $0 because it's all powered by the sun and stored in the great batteries that they're made these days. But on the financial freedom side, the only thing left to pay is basically your property taxes, and we have a pretty small HOA fee, but it's still a fee. And the HOA obviously takes care of all the things around, the common areas and streets and all that, street lamps and all those sorts of things. But, we're working on a cool project right now where we're also solar powered Bitcoin mining. So the goal, and I'm not saying we'll get there, the goal would be to earn enough Bitcoin if you want to use your excess solar power to mine Bitcoin and use that to pay off your HOA fees and your property tax. Of course, it couldn't go much more if you had a big miner or whatever, but that would be our goal here, is to say, this home has basically free food, free water, and free power. And now my Bitcoin that I'm mining in my back room is covering my HOA fees and property tax. You get to the point where it's like, what other fees do you really have? Go Christmas shopping for your grandchildren or something, but that's my fee. Yeah. But the goal is to be as sustainable as possible. And like I said, I might laugh, but my thing is, I think the next COVID thing is going to be something climate change related, where they're going to say, there's solar flares or something that you have to stay inside, or whatever the next lockdown reason is. And that's just my theory, because I see the mainstream media going from COVID's gone, or we'll drop that topic, and now we're moving on to what's the next big thing. And half of the stories on the news right now are climate change, right? So anyway, that's kind of, we just wanted to talk a bit today about, what the Veritas Village sustainability is all about. And again, just to reiterate, when we talk about being off-grid, and in our company called EcoVillages, I just want to make sure people understand this is not AOC's Green New Deal. This is being as financially free and as self-sufficient within a community that feels the same way as you can be. And I think that's gives you all the best of the world to live in. That kind of community. It's kind of what I felt like I grew up in without even knowing about it. Like, we had our garden in our backyard, and in Canada, in the prairies where I grew up, you had about 4, maybe if you're lucky, 5 months to produce all the food and everything, and water. We had a big cistern that we had to fill during the rains in the summer. And, all that stuff had to be done within 4 or 5 months. Well, when we decided on, after moving off the boat and wanting to create communities like this, one of the decisions in my head is let's get closer to, the equator, because we get a lot more sun, get way more comfortable living conditions, climate, come up a little bit in elevation, so you get a very steady weather. We have our temperature and very livable temperatures for.
I'm Canadian and I'm wearing pants right now.
Yeah.
So it's not that hot here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very bearable when you come up to an elevation like we have here.
Yeah, and most nights, like we've had the air conditioners on the last couple nights, but they haven't really been doing anything. I mean, it's just the fan's been going because they haven't really had to switch on the compressor because it's just cooler than they are set at.
Yeah, it's just a bit of dehumidification.
Yeah,
so they're doing, if that's a word. Dehumidification.
So.
But yeah, also on the note, just so we were talking about the cost of living in general, that's really a huge part of it for me. My friends call me cheap. I call me efficient. But the boat living was a big part of that for me too. That's a huge part of why I did it. I couldn't afford to live in my hometown, but I wanted to stay. And living on the sailboat there, you just drive the cost of living way down, right? You're producing, you don't have power bills, you don't have water bills, all this stuff. So that was a huge, to me, that provided a lot of freedom in my life that I wouldn't have otherwise had if I had standard bills. At the time, I was young and not making that much money, so I was just I would have been paycheck to paycheck if it wasn't for living on the boat. I had the opportunity because of that to save some money, and it was a big deal for me. In general, like the cost of living here in Panama is lower. The homes that we're designing them to bring the cost of living down as much as reasonably possible, and then even like the fun stuff, like the motorcycles and stuff. We'll show you the bikes that we got as well. But it's $2,000 from a dealership, 2024 motorcycles. Yes, they are Chinese motorcycles, but yes, they are actually pretty good. I mean, I can't complain. Mine stopped running for a minute there, but it was just the carb because I had left it sitting for a long time, my fault. So it is, I'm a bike guy kind of. I know Japanese bikes are probably the best, and I have a Japanese bike too, but these Chinese ones have impressed me, and those are $2,000 brand new from the dealership.
Including the insurance. With
a year of insurance, with a helmet, and with gloves. Like, you drive it away from the dealership for a year, you can ride that thing without anything else happening. That's $7 in fuel you have to put in it. And so for $2,000, like, it was just like that kind of thing is not really an option up in North America anymore. And so that kind of stuff, I just bring that up because it gives you an idea of the kind of entertainment stuff you can do for a lot more cost effective.
Well, it's a good point, I think, that we probably overlook sometimes because we live down here, is that your cost of living, I calculate, if we did a big chart on it, like the cost of an Apple versus an Apple, or like power bill, where it doesn't count here being power bills, but we have somewhere a big chart of that. But it came out to be a quarter to a fifth, or a fifth to a quarter of the cost of living price once you're down here and living. And you touched on a thing about ongoing cost of living, right? So we see a ton of Canadians, Americans, New Zealand, Australians, lots of Europeans, and this is a great mix in Veritas Village. People from all over the world, just like-minded and wanting to get away from the authoritarian type of government decisions that are being made. But once you have your home, they're always thinking about, okay, I sold my home in Toronto or California or whatever for a pretty decent price, because the prices are extremely high relative to here. They bring that money down. They can spend a quarter of it maybe to have a beautiful, beautiful home here in Panama, and then they're thinking about, okay, but I have to make a living and I have to do all this stuff, so what we're working on with the self-sustainable communities is basically driving that cost of living to as close to zero as possible, and then you don't have to be like, 'cause the biggest stress of people I find in the world is just financial. Like, if you don't have big bills or any, like, it takes off almost all your stresses. Then you can worry about the other things in life, and that's a nice place to be in. But I really love that about being here, and can't wait to move into this community as well, because then you can do whatever you want, and every cent you save. So we calculated the other day too that, well, in Canada, and that's maybe an extreme case, but not always. Australia is similar, and other places, but probably your net take-home pay or keep pay is somewhere, I'm being generous, I think, but 30% of what you make. 70% is taken away in income tax, GST, PST, property tax, blah, blah, you go on and on. And, you know, at the end of the day, so if you made 30% of what you made in Canada, for instance, down here, you'd be breaking even, because you could do that if you set up your community or your corporations or yourself correctly. You could be paying a whopping 0% income tax. And then if you don't have to go out and buy stuff because you're living in a Veritas Village where your expenses are basically almost zero, then, you know, you're really, and then if you take that 30% and you say, okay, I'll be nice and say it's a third of the cost of living down here. So now you're down to, you know, whatever that works out to, a third of 30%, but it's not exactly, it's a third of the 100, but let's call it 15% of the cost, and you can live on it, you know, and keep your same lifestyle that you had before, and frankly a better lifestyle, because you can go outdoors all year round, every time, you know, any day of the year. They call this area kind of springtime all the time, because regardless of whether it's raining or clear, the weather temperatures are very similar. You know, they range from 21, 22 degrees Celsius, call that about 70, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, up to, you know, it can get warm. It can get into the 90s or like 30, 32, 33. But here it's generally cooler than the beach. So, you know, it's still warm enough to use your pool and be comfortable, but all year round. Like, you don't have to worry. You're never going to get anything like snow or anything near it. So it's just a better lifestyle. You can go out. I still have a Canadian PTSD, I think, because I'll reach for a jacket when I'm going outside, because now I know it's like getting into December. It's getting close to Christmas while we record this, and I'm thinking, oh, when I go outside, I should grab my jacket. It's like, you know. And the other thing too, or just in Europe, and not to beat up on Europe, because I think Europe's got many beautiful countries and places, and we were in Barcelona and Geneva and Prague and Avignon in the south of France, and beautiful, beautiful places. But the crime was so high that, you know, I had to have my hand on my wallet and my phone all the time. And honestly, you know, and even the people we were visiting there were saying, yeah, you absolutely do. And then we got attempted pickpocketed twice on a 10-day trip, which is kind of annoying, frankly. And so when I came back to Panama, I said to Andrea, isn't it nice to get off the plane and I don't have to have my hand on my wallet anymore, or I don't have to leave my, you know, credit cards and cash in the safe somewhere and just take out a little bit, so that if it does get stolen, I don't have too much. So here in Panama, especially in the rural areas like we're in here, we're still 10 minutes away from a great town with movie theaters and restaurants and grocery stores and hardware stores and everything you ever wanted, great restaurants. But I don't have to worry about being any kind of crime, really. I mean, there's always crime everywhere you go, and you got to be smart. But, you know, it's so much lower here. So I think it's just a perfect place. It's a great place to get away from authoritarian, you know, governments, and just, we have our own community that just pretty like-minded, doesn't want to be told what to do. And so to me, it's a great place. And so appreciate you joining us. Thanks very much, Spencer. It was great to have you on the show. I know you're in.
Absolutely.
We work together every day, all day long, but I figured it was time to get you to talk about some stuff too. So we'll force you back on the show again soon. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it, and take care.
Thank you, everybody.